was just an average night staying inside of my house, relaxing and resting from some minor pain in my legs I was facing. I lived alone and rented my own property, so I couldn't really wait for any other person to help me with certain stuff, including any packages to pick up or just medication I would need to grab. I didn't mind that since I wasn't in much of a bad condition, but it's still gonna be uncomfortable when moving around as much. I was laying down on the couch and waited until I might have eventually fallen asleep. I didn't really feel like watching TV or using my phone. I don't know if other people experience this too, but it makes my eyes feel like quite dry when using screens too much in the dark, and it isn't the greatest feeling when waking up to that. The time was probably around 11:40 p.m. and it was taking a while for me to get tired. I guess it might have been because I took a 2 to 3 hour nap during the middle of the day. I remained in my position and heard a very loud knock on the door. This was strange and I wasn't sure why someone would be at my door during this time. The packages usually stop arriving before 9 p.m. and I wasn't expecting anyone I personally knew to come by, especially at this time. By the way, all my lights were turned off, so I really doubt that person at the door knew someone was inside, but that didn't really matter at this moment since I needed to know who was there. I didn't have one of those camera doorbells or any cameras in general outside to see, so I had to try looking out my window or through the peephole. I heard another knock, and this time they screamed out, "What are you doing in there? Open the door." It almost sounded like this guy was acting like he knew me. The way he said that didn't really sound aggressive. This kept going on for like 20 minutes, and I didn't want to find out who was there. I have one of those doors that people can slightly see from the outside if they really look properly, so I wasn't trying to let this stranger know I was home. I wanted to make sure I didn't fall asleep with someone potentially waiting to come inside my property, so I sat there on my couch to avoid falling asleep easily. After waiting for like an hour or so, I didn't hear any more knocks or voices outside from that person. I assumed they had finally given up and walked away now, so I tried falling asleep and would check the door when morning time comes by. It would be more convenient to do that with the pain I had anyway. The sun was out now and I had woken up at around 7:25 a.m. I got some good sleep, I would say, and just remembered to check out if anything had happened to my door, so I went over there and did that. I was looking at the locks and the structure to see if any damage had been done from the inside and outside of my property, but I didn't see anything that was concerning. However, when I did open the door, I saw some chocolate bar paper wrapper slide into the floor of my house. I just picked it up to throw it away, and when I slightly turned it over, I saw some word on there that was hard to read with dried up dirt showing the word "why." I was thinking in my mind if this was just some paper wrapper blown around from the streets just coming to my door, but this seemed very specific and it was like stuck underneath my door as well, I think. I just threw away that trash and was thinking if this person wrote in dirt using a paper wrapper from a chocolate bar, why would he place the word "why" though if I didn't know him? Over the upcoming days, I didn't get any more strange stuff like this, which was obviously a good thing, and I would hope to expect nothing strange anyway. Maybe that person might have needed help, but I'm not sure. I still would advise being very careful when opening the doors to strangers. Many bad things can happen just by opening it, and within those few seconds and minutes, we might not be ready to face what the other person might be planning to do, especially if kids are opening the doors. This is a warning to take seriously. Many times, when I'll be left home alone from around my late teenage years, I usually will be left alone for many hours, and it gave me that nice time to have on my own without much distraction. Sometimes just completing my homework, and other times might be working out, really depending on what I felt like doing. My parents and brothers were going outside to some other place, and I didn't want to go, so they just told me to stay home and not to leave the house, while also locking the door in the process as they were leaving. Even if I wanted to go outside, I don't think I would be able to anyway, since I didn't have any home keys yet. I decided I would just go to the kitchen to grab something to eat, and then probably watch some TV before going to bed. This wouldn't be my usual routine. I was just a little tired that day, and could take on more hours of sleep, I guess. I was in the kitchen, just making some oatmeal on the stove. It was nice and easy to make, along with it being a good comforting food. While I was making that, I heard some knocking coming from the front door, and this startled me a little. Usually when I'm home alone, I wouldn't need to worry about people knocking on the door and stuff, since we don't really order stuff from online much. We don't even have much people coming over too, and especially if I'd been home alone. I would like to think they would know about my family going outside that day. Maybe not on some occasions, but I assume you get the point. I slowly crouched and made my way over to the kitchen door just so I can peek my head out a little to see if I could go ahead without being seen from the window or something. It seemed like it was clear for me to go, and I did that, making sure I didn't make too much sound. I wasn't hearing any more knocking at that current moment, but still assumed the person was waiting around. I was staring at the window and could slightly see a shadow of someone on the wall. It seemed pretty obvious now that he had remained in his position, so I couldn't really go on with what I wanted to do when some unknown person was at the door waiting there. 5 minutes went by and it was still the same situation, until I heard some sounds coming from around the side to the back of the house. We had wooden fences covering the backyard, so I did feel safe knowing there was some level of physical barrier present. I went up the stairs and went to one of the rooms that was facing closest to where I heard the sound. I couldn't get too much of a good view, but it was good enough, since I could see some person trying to look over the wooden fence, and even jumping on the spot a couple times. This was strange, and I didn't recognize this person as well. I was just standing there and constantly staring at that direction, to which it finally looked like he was walking away. I also want to mention it was quite dark as well, so it wouldn't be easy to see what was going on outside. I thought this was the end of it and quickly went back to the kitchen to make sure the oatmeal wasn't getting dried out from taking so long. I probably made quite a lot of noise when doing that, because I then heard another knock on the door when I made it back to the kitchen. I was stressing out a little and was thinking if he heard me running back there. I think people from the outside might be able to hear slightly from the inside if they are close enough. This time, I figured I should just stay in the kitchen and not even try walking away, so I sat down on the floor just hoping they would go away. I waited around and didn't feel as hungry anymore. I just left my food there on the stove. My main concern was to make sure that no one was entering the house, and I was glad in that moment that my parents had locked the door before leaving. Otherwise, that would have kept me overthinking a lot if it wasn't. I was using my phone while being in the kitchen. An hour went by and I decided to get out of the kitchen and try seeing if the person was still there. To my surprise, it didn't look like he was. I made sure to go upstairs and do so without making so much noise, going to my room and trying to go to sleep. It took a while for me to do that, as I was still thinking about who that person was and what they wanted. Nothing more really happened relating to that situation after waking up. I let my parents know about it, and they were thinking it was probably someone I had never seen before, but they might have known themselves. It did make me feel a little better hearing that. However, it was still strange that they knocked again right after I had gone back to the kitchen. No matter how much pressure it might be in these situations, keeping that door closed is probably one of the best preventions if it's some unknown stranger. Better than facing potential further consequences that I am sure many of us would want to avoid. I had school break and I was staying over at my cousin's place for some days. We didn't really get to have these times to relax and stay over like that as much, since school would usually be keeping us busy, but I didn't really get homework or anything for the school break, so that was great. We were just playing with some RC cars and driving it within the house. It was pretty fun, and my cousin's parents were sleeping in the attic, so they wouldn't hear us that easily. We were playing this for quite some time and then heard some sounds from the outside of the front door. We were just going around driving the RC car around the rooms of his place, and when I was going by the front door area, I could hear some pretty loud scratching sounds on the door. I was confused, but this was a very unusual sound, and it was hard to just dismiss it without stopping and trying to hear out for it. I told my cousins to stop for a few seconds very quietly, and the scratching sound stopped right before I did that. My cousins were confused, and I was trying to let them know that someone is potentially at the front door using something to scratch the door or whatever. This was very out of the ordinary and unexpected, so they weren't really understanding as much. I just tried walking away from the front entrance and remained quite close by to it, just in case if I did hear any more sounds from there. My cousins were just sitting down and talking with each other now, and I stood by them trying to listen out for anything from the front door. It was really weird, but I was just waiting for the sounds to come back, so that my cousins could hear it for themselves. I wasn't trying to be the only one hearing that strange stuff and no one believing me. 10 minutes had gone by, and I was still waiting nearby to the front door area. I started to think maybe it was just some animal or something. Even though that sounded like a very bad reason in my mind, I was just doubting myself and sat down with my cousins talking with them. We only had the lights from the kitchen turned on, but it was enough for us to see properly, so that was fine. We were just having some usual conversation with each other, until I heard some sounds coming from the door once again. I immediately let my cousins know, and this time they finally heard it too. They got kinda scared, and one of them just told us that we should turn off all the lights downstairs and go upstairs. I followed through with that and turned off the kitchen light. Then we slowly made our way upstairs. My cousins were just asking if we should wake their parents up, but it was like 1 a.m, so I didn't want to wake them up for something that might not be potentially overly serious, even if someone was at the door. We remained in one of my cousins' room and was just watching YouTube to try taking our mind off of that. Then we were just falling asleep one by one. In the morning, when we woke up, we probably fell into a deep sleep. My cousin's dad came through the front door and told my cousin to come downstairs to show something. I was originally thinking nothing of it, but then I heard the door open again, and then they were talking about scratches on it, asking if he knew where it came from. My cousin told him everything, and his dad sounded very confused. I wasn't really sure what they were gonna do about it, but he wasn't too concerned about it, I think. He said he would just use sandpaper to reduce the visibility of the scratches, and that was basically the end of that situation. It's still very disturbing in my opinion though. Who would be scratching the door that early in the morning, and why would they do that in the first place? I really hope people understand that being inside of a home isn't always going to be safe when there might be strange situations like this. It's just better to have more home security systems put in place for prevention, I would say.